Hello listeners, welcome to another engaging, expository and informative episode of our program series titled Financial Inclusion and Economic Development on Amorgate Radio Communications. I remain your host, Titilola Ogunshono. Today, we will be discussing a contemporary issue, gender factor in financial inclusion. Empirical data has revealed that there exists a gap between the male and female access to financial services. According to the World Bank Global Findex database of 2021, it revealed that 78% of men worldwide have a formal bank account compared to 74% of women. This disparity is even more evident among developing economies or nations. About 74% of men in developing economies or nations, have access to financial services. That is, they have a bank account, while we have 68% of women in developing nations, economies who have bank accounts. And when we come down to the sub-Saharan Africa, data has revealed that about 61% of men have a formal bank account compared to 49% of women. And it's also worthy to note that even this 49%, this figure has doubled, over, the last decade. So the disparity is evident in the sub-Saharan Africa. Okay. Coming further to Nigeria, with emphasis on Nigeria, 35% of Nigerian women had bank accounts, according to a survey that was carried out in 2021 by the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) as part of the global MICS program. Out of 38,806 women who were surveyed, data revealed that 64.6%, that is about 25,088 to be precise, women do not have bank accounts. Thus, the implication of this is that the percentage of women who own bank accounts is about 11.8 percentage points lower than the 47.2% of men who own bank accounts. But what are the implications of these data that we have mentioned? The implication is that the disparity would lead to gender inequalities. Of course, it could hinder economic opportunities for the female gender, for the women. And once this is evident in economy, this will limit the growth of the economy. And of course, it's going to limit the economic development of such a country. Just like we mentioned on previous episode, there has been a lot of strategies, policies being put in place by governments of various nations, various economies, for developing economies, now to ensure that we have more people, having access, more people are included, into the financial space, into the banks, the formal services. However, research has shown over and over again that women around the globe, especially in developing economies, continue to face significant barriers to accessing financial services. And with these data that we've seen in Nigeria, it has become pertinent to take an in-depth look at this issue, the gender factor in financial inclusion, because this gap must look at ways to not eradicate it, not totally eliminate this gap. We must find ways to reduce this gap drastically. So to do justice to the topic today, I have with me an economist who is passionate about economic development issues, environmental issues. He's passionate about the issue of financial inclusion, and he will be with me discussing crucial dimensions on today's subject matter. He is Mr. Precious Ukaebu. Thank you so much, Mr. Precious, for joining us. I will take a brief profile of Mr. Precious. Mr. Precious Chibuike Ukaebo is a social entrepreneur, passionate about education, human capital development, and economic empowerment. Inspired by young people from low to middle income backgrounds, he founded Dream to Impact in 2024 to tackle educational inequality. This non-profit organization is committed to reforming Nigeria's educational landscape by providing mentorship, skills development, and hands-on learning opportunities. Since inception, Dream to Impact has transformed the lives of about 3,000 Nigerian students. As an aspiring development economics and policy consultant, he is committed to advance the economic system, like to scale informal economies, foster gender inclusion, and drive sustainable economic development. What does he enjoy to do in his free time? He loves to read, write, create whimsical mixed media visual works, likes to teach his peers and engage in conversations around social cultural issues. Thank you so much, Mr. Ukaebo, for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barry. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, yes, it sounds very quiet, but I can assure you that Mr. Precious is passionate about this topic, and he has a lot of experience in this area that will be sharing with us on our episode today. Okay, and we know that there's been a lot of progress in financial inclusion, like I've mentioned in two other previous episode that we heard, but I'm saying that but despite all of this progress that has been made, research has still revealed that women continue to face significant barriers in accessing financial services. Okay, and it's important to not look at it further, to look at what are the issues around this disparity. So I'll start with my first question to you, Mr. Ukaebo. What would you say are cultural barriers hindering women in accessing financial services in developing economies, especially in Nigeria?
Okay, so Nigerian women face a lot of structural barriers, right? Those barriers range from institutional barriers, employment barriers, even cultural barriers, right? For example, when you talk about institutional barriers, in 2023, a survey carried out by the National Bureau of Statistics as part of the Global MICS program shows that out of the 38,806 women surveyed, 25,085 don't have bank accounts, right? And this percentage of women who don't have bank accounts is 11.8 percentage points lower than the 47.2% of men who own bank accounts. And this disparity is even greater in northern Nigeria, because if you look at the further reports, if you look at the report of the NBS, it reveals that Kano, Katsina, Bauchi, Kaduna, Jigawa, and Niger are top states in terms of women that don't have bank accounts. For example, you have 5.7% in Kano, 3.8% in Katsina, 3.2% in Bauchi, 3.1% in Kaduna, and for example in Niger, 2.6%. Right? So, right, ma?
Yeah, please go on.
So in the report, it was also stated that the reasons for not owning bank accounts, 14.2% of women stated that the banks are not available in their locality, maybe because they live in rural areas. 5.7% said it was too costly to get to the nearest bank, right? And 58.6% cited unstable incomes, and 22.8% cited that it was either due to unemployment or lost jobs. Yes. So you can also see in the report, it also stated that the other reasons for not having bank accounts include they lack trust in bank. There's also religious reasons. There's time wasting because of documentation, and other reasons like that. Yes. So we also have employment barriers. Nigerian women are more likely to work in informal sectors, and which comprise of over 70% women. So women dominate the informal sector, according to a research by genderpedia.ng, right? And they take on roles like trading, farming, small scale manufacturing, and the incomes in these sectors are not regular. They are irregular. They are not properly documented, and which makes it less attractive to for formal institutions, right? For example, if a woman makes 3,000 naira per month or per day, particularly, she won't really see the need to go and keep the money in the bank. She can just keep it in her safe box, right? Compared to people who say they earn 100,000 naira per day, or let's say if we're calculating monthly, let's say 500k per month, right? That amount is a lot, and they will say, okay, they will see the reason to own bank accounts. Women, this is another reason why women are not really, there's grave financial disintegration when it comes to women, because they mostly work in informal sectors, which kind of hinders that they need to own banks. Yeah, you understand? Yes. So there are also cultural barriers. Like a lot of Nigerian tribes and cultures right now that are contemporarily patriarchal, right? Although certain cultures and religions are much more liberal than others, right? But a lot of them are still rooted in like patriarchal values, right? For example, across many Nigerian cultures, women are expected to be financially dependent on their male family members, let's say fathers, husbands, or brothers, right? These expectations can manifest in several ways, such as women discouraged from owning bank accounts without the approval of their husbands. Even recently on Twitter, there was a very big controversial issue, right? So one woman reported that her maid, right, said that she should stop working, right? Her husband said she should stop working, right? Because she opened a bank account for the maid, and her husband felt like that was against their agreement, because why would you like going against her husband to own a bank account? So when we talk about all those intersectional or deeply patriarchal values that affect like women or married women in society, and kind of like a reason why they do not why their financial inclusion is limited. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Precious, for that detailed explanation. Well, you've mentioned the structural barriers to include institutional barriers, employment barriers, and cultural barriers. We'll still come back to cultural barriers in details because it's interesting. I wanted to share more light on that. But you mentioned some very salient point when you're talking about institutional barriers. According to the report, that you gave to us at 2023, and that was the one of the National Bureau of Statistics. Okay, about the northern region where the involvement of women in having financial services, access to financial services were quite low. Kano, Katsina, Bauchi, Kaduna, and Niger, extremely low. And looking at all of those things that you said some of the reasons in the survey that was carried out were attributable to banks not being available at proximity to the banks. You mentioned unstable income, the lack of trust, and documentation. So I want to look at the issue of the proximity. I know that we have a lot of banks. We have some banks like the First Bank, in those remote areas. You say they are not adequate. Do you think having more banks would help? What about the issue of the fintech? Do you think that would help? Having the banks, we have banks in those rural areas. So we say, is it more of proximity, or is it more of the issue of the lack of trust and the rigorous documentation process? Which would you say would be more relevant in this? So what do you think the problem would be out of these three?
So I would say it's more of proximity, because most people that live in rural, or most women, because we're talking about women here, that live in rural or very, very hidden areas, right? Do not really have good roads, and mostly bush, and do not have good roads to access those banks, right? So I feel like to bridge this gap, that's where financial technology companies come into play, like OP, that can help to bridge this gap, rather than say traditional banks like GT Bank. Because to be used, they will have operational costs, the staffing, the infrastructure, power, and all of that. Okay. So you say it's the proximity, not the lack of trust. So you think these women would trust, they'll have the trust in the fintech, if we say fintech is the way to go? Honestly, again, with fintech, I feel that with fintech, it needs to even be more indigenous. Because, most women in the rural areas, rather most people in rural areas, don't really, they'll be more comfortable in their local languages, right? Their traditional languages and dialects. And when you want to operate this fintech, or you go to the bank and people are speaking English to them when they don't really understand English, or they are trying to operate this their mobile phone, if they even have at all, and it's only English that they are reading. So most banks and fintech organizations really need to go down into the traditional problem. And actually, not every Nigerian, especially those living in the rural areas or remote areas, actually understand English. So they have to also consider the various dialects. I'm not even just talking about the Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa now. I'm talking about the various Nigerian dialects we have. So maybe if they want to reach women in more areas, they can consider doing a research that's in that area and saying, okay, what kind of language do these people speak? What kind of language do they understand? Maybe set up a target program that can be able to reach those people based on the language that they speak. So most women would have access and understand it better. Because you'll be able to trust something you understand. You don't just go into a place that you don't understand the means of communication there.
So thank you so much for that valuable insight, Mr. Precious. Okay, now you mentioned something about the employment barriers. Okay, whether I like it or not, the peculiarity of the Nigerian economy is that we have more people, not just women, in the informal sector. Okay, so definitely you're not even ruling out. So we have more women in the informal sector. So now when you're talking about them having more access to financial, services, and it's about 70%. That's large. That's huge. Are you saying that the structure we have on ground in our financial institutions would not bring out the best, getting more people included in having this access to financial services?
I feel like, so the structures, again, especially with traditional banks, do not, because most people that earn very low or meager income, they don't feel the need to own banks, because why would you go to the bank to come and deposit 3,000 naira or things like when you can easily just keep it in your safe box at home? Do you get? So this is why there needs to be more education, more financial literacy, and showing them the need to actually own this bank account, especially with trading and businesses. Do you get? We need more grassroots operations, informing these people and teaching them that even if you don't make this amount of money, this is how banks can help you. You can keep your money in this bank. You can also get loans. You can even accrue interest that can help you grow your business like that. So it's not just
So for the informal sector, what you are saying is that there must be more grassroots operations.
Yes.
That will entice them into the banking space, into the formal banking space. Okay. Now you mentioned the last one. I thought I was going to come back to take you up on the cultural barriers. Okay. Yes, we know that there are various ethnics, in Nigeria with different cultural values. Okay. Now, because the cultural value of those from the southwest will be different from those from the southeast. Okay, from the northern part is going to be very different. So I want to ask you, do you think these cultural values have significant impact on women's autonomy in Nigeria?
Yes, our cultural values actually have a grave significant effect on women's financial autonomy. Even when you look at our cultural practices in pre-colonial times, and look at how it has shifted to contemporary times to even what we have now, you can see there are a lot of differences. For example, when you talk about Igbo women in pre-colonial times, right? Igbo women were very invested in entrepreneurship. They were very invested in trade. There was even a title that was given to Igbo women that were very successful traders, and the title was known as Omu, right? However, during colonization, with the influx of Abrahamic religion, right, so that now restricted certain rights of those women, right, due to the conservative values you get, and then now became a time when women's rights in the Igbo land were restricted. For example, they could not own property rights. Property was given to their brothers or the males in their family, even though if the women were even older than the men, but they would feel okay, you are leaving your house, you're leaving the family, so why would you own lands? You understand? However, thankfully, with the like modern wave of feminism now, there are like issues that are dying off. For example, there was an Igbo woman that fought the inheritance rights, and now Igbo women can now inherit their father's properties, right? So there's also like participation of women in informal saving groups. For example, in we call it Isusu in Igbo, is very high there. Women, this informal sector, they save money. Do you get? However, when you now transitioning that financial banking is constrained due to like the traditional family dynamics that also favor the male decision makers. Okay, the man's the head of the home. Not saying that's a bad thing, but when you look at it culturally, it kind of affects how the dynamics of who gets to make the decisions, especially who gets to own like the financial autonomy of women, right? So, and this can also be seen in the Yoruba culture, right? Especially with cultural acceptance of women-led thrift systems such as Ajo or Isusu, right, which supports grassroots financial access. But the same thing happens that this is not translated to like formal financial inclusion because of the same traditional expectations that shape decision making and placing men in charge of larger financial matters. And now when you even go down to the north, there's even graver disparities, right? When you try to cite like the Hausa and Fulani traditions, right, where they have strong religious attachments, right? For example, with an emphasis on Puda, right, that emphasizes female seclusion, which limits women's mobility and ability to engage directly with financial institutions, right? So women's access to employment, education, digital tools is lower compared to certain other regions, which now compounds their whole financial exclusion. There was even a report by the Gender Center of Excellence on Situational Analysis of Women's Financial Inclusion in Nigeria that states that only 4% of women in the Northeast and Northwest regions are financially included via formal institutions. That means they go to formal institutions to do financial engagement compared to like the 60% that exist in the southern region. So even in Nigeria, there are grave disparities within regions, but I feel like which needs to now be addressed. Understand? Yeah.
Okay, now whether you like it or not, when you talk about culture, the way of life of a particular set of people, culture has it has in-depth root, is really indebted in values over the centuries. That's not always easy to pull people out of it. Okay. Now looking at the statistics that we have, I remember that over 2 decades ago, I also served in the northern part, and I could see that we have most women were not working, and most of them were not allowed to go to places or the cities to save. They can't even go there to save, so they don't have access to finance. Now it has been there for a very long time, and recent statistics still showing that we still have issue of financial inclusion in terms of women in these areas. So what do you think the formal sector, do you think policies would help to get more women in northern part of Nigeria into the formal space? Or what do you think will marry this? What would you suggest that the policy makers can do in this regard? Because whether you like it or not, when you're talking about the rate of financial inclusion, it's going to involve all regions. So even if a particular region has high level, high rates, having maybe a better percentage, we're not going to base the country on just a particular region that is doing it so well. It's going to be cumulative at the micro level. So definitely there'll be a particular part where there is a challenge. So until we fix this challenge, I don't think Nigeria can get out of this space. So how do you think that these cultural values can be tweaked? How do you think these cultural values, can be modified? What can we do to ensure that we have more participation of women in these areas?
So with changing cultural values, right, or making women more financially inclusive, right, we need gender specific policies, but not just gender specific policies that is like a one size fits all, but gender specific policies that are targeted to each region, right? Because every region has different values and different expectations of their women. So those gender specific regions have to be very targeted to the values of the indigenous values of that region, right? And there needs to be cooperation with the traditional institutions, traditional and religious institutions or religious leaders of the place. Because let's be honest, a lot of people in Nigeria too actually admonish or actually value their traditional rights and traditional systems and also their religious beliefs, right? So there has to be a way to kind of marry these values with also with policies and show them and show them that okay, it's actually possible to actually do this thing. It doesn't take away your traditional rights or traditional beliefs and your religious beliefs. It's possible to do it, and so that's why we need help with just traditional institutions and the religious leaders that will show them and actually guide them, right? Or actually run grassroots programs to actually inform people. So before any financial institution, whether fintech, traditional banks or fintech, that wants to help, right, with enhancing and financial inclusion for women, should actually engage in targeted gender specific policies that will help them get more women into their sectors. And the government should collaborate with these financial institutions or help these financial institutions by setting policies, because if there are no policies in place that mandate these laws, right, nothing can be done. So it's both a private public partnership that's targeted at different regions specifically. Do you understand? They have different regions have different values and different systems. So it's not just going to be a one size fits all that things that apply to the west apply to the east and the north. That's to be different, right? But aiming to get the same objective, which is getting women giving women more financial access.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Precious. From what you can say, you're saying that it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach, that you have to have gender-specific policies, because if you don't have a framework, a law that will ensure that we drive this down is not going to be effective. And definitely collaboration with the private institution, the fintech, will go a long way. And what I can also hear you say is that you have to look at the peculiarities of each region. So if you are coming up with a particular policy, it must be data driven. You have to get data, look at the cultural value system, cultural components, because what is going to affect the Southeast, peculiar to them, is not going to affect the Northeast. It's not going to affect the Southwest. So you have to look at the peculiarity, of the region, of the people, the religion, of the cultural values of that setting. You have to come up with policies that would help them. So not a one-size-fits-all approach. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. If you are just joining us, thank you so much. We have with us a very engaging someone who is very passionate about developmental issues, and we are discussing reasons why women are still left behind in financial access. Okay, thank you so much for just joining us. I must confess, Mr. Precious, that it has been an engaging, insightful, expository session with you. Okay, and for those who are joining us, we are discussing the gender factor in financial inclusion with a closer and intense look at the female gender, that's the closer look at women. Okay, I will ask you the last question for today. Mr. Precious, I want to find out, are financial institutions, in your own view, your opinion, are they doing enough to design gender responsive products? Okay, if yes, do you think there are areas of improvement? If no, what areas would you suggest or do you think should be improved upon? So,
in my opinion, I do not think, right, that financial institutions are doing enough to design gender responsive products, right? Because according to the 2023 report by the according to the 2023 report by the EFNA, right, only 13% of Nigerian financial institutions have gender specific products, right? So most financial products that they design, right, are designed with the same one size fits all approach, and it does not account. Yes, it's very general approach. It does not account for the traditional values. It does not account for the differences that exists between the urban women in the urban areas and women in rural areas. It does not account for this women's irregular income flows. It does not account for the childcare responsibilities of women. It does not account for the mobility constraints. So all these are already considered, right, when making gender specific products, right? It's not again, we need a more specific approach that is targeted to each region and women, because even when you look at disparities that exist amongst women, it's like some women face more disparities than other women, right? If you look at when you talk about financial disparities, right? Women in general, right, face financial disparities, but even in certain regions, there are more women that still face more financial disparities than the average woman. So there needs to be a specific approach. Again, that is why empirical research is very important, especially when it comes to creating policies and creating products, right, or programs that can benefit people. You do targeted research to know what exactly each region needs, or even if within a specific region, what kind of women live in that region, what do they earn, what are their needs, what are their responsibilities, and how can you seek to help them, not just applying like general policies that benefit quote unquote every woman, right? Because every woman is not the same woman. Yes.
Okay, you've mentioned that, and those are areas that should be improved upon. It's not a one-size approach. You have to. That's why we talk about taking informed decisions backed by data. We need to go back into these areas, see what the income levels are, see what the needs are, even look at where their talents are. Okay, is it the product service? Is it the product area? Is it service? What do they have in that locality? What can be optimized? Because at the end of the day, I always say that the financial institutions have a major role to play, because you need finance to transform your ideas into outcomes in terms of either a service or a product. So that link, like it or not, we always say that finance is the blood of the stock market. Okay, so definitely anywhere in terms of business, finance is very important, and accessibility to finance even starts with even owning an account with the bank. That's when you can have access to it. Okay, thank you so much for this. I wish we could go on. I've enjoyed myself, but we would have to wrap it up at this point. I hope that we'll call you next week for the continuation of this episode. We'll wrap it up next episode. I hope you'll be available to come and join us and share your usual robust insight on this subject matter.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Barrett. It was very insightful and engaging conversation. I even learned a lot doing research on this topic, right? And I said, okay, it's good for me to speak to people so I can also share the wealth of knowledge I also have. Because, and with issues like this, especially when it comes to like inclusivity and financial access, every Nigerian needs to step in, right, and actually solve this issue, because financial access or financial inclusivity does not just benefit women alone, it benefits every Nigerian, and in turn helps with our economic development. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Barry.
Thank you so much. And our guest, the speaker, has said it all. It's about being inclusive, everyone, not just the female gender, but it's more pronounced now. It would be good to take a holistic view at it now, because you have the disparity. There must be structures in place. There must be policy that would enhance, strengthen our structure as an organization, as a society, so that we can optimize, our natural resources. We can optimize our talents, so that it will lead to increase in our economic growth. And if it's done across all sectors, we, like Mr. Precious has said, we have women in the rural areas, we have women in farming, right? We have women in different sectors, informal sectors, so definitely if we can have a balanced sectorial approach, definitely that will lead to economic development of our country. Thank you so much Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this is all we can take on today's episode, Gender Factor in Financial Inclusion, on our program series, Financial Inclusion and Economic Development. I hope that you have learned, you have enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions, feedback for us, kindly send a mail to contact@thearmorgate.org. And remember to join my colleagues on other programs next week. We have programs that run from Monday to Fridays. Okay, Monday 5 p.m. WAT, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. My program is 5 p.m. WAT, still on the same station, Armorgate Radio Communications. And we have a lot of episodes uploaded on our YouTube channel. We hope that you subscribe and you go there to watch a lot of videos on various issues, on strategic planning, leadership issues, economic issues, socio-political, educational, a lot of enlightening episode. I will not leave without dropping this. Remember, you prosper women, you prosper nations. Till I find my way to your devices next Friday, I wish you a fruitful weekend, and I say bye from here.